Welcome to PCMC. I'm Mike Bongiorno. Oh boy. Today I am joined once again by Mike Fischetti.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Mike, how are you?
As good as I can be.
Thank you for your candor.
I do my best. I'm here for the people. The people demanded that I return, and so I returned.
Well, we really set the world on fire with the Ready Player One episode.
Oof.
And we had to come back. So we did Ready Player One. Our first episode dealt with both the book and the film.
Yeah.
This time around, we're dealing just with Ready Player Two, the book. It is not yet a film. I think it will be one.
Yeah.
I read the acknowledgments of the second book, and he even says in it that he would discuss story points with Spielberg. So I think it's happening,
Yeah, I can't imagine it's not, because the first one was a box office hit to at least a degree. I mean, it made it made 580 million worldwide. I
don't know what a hit is anymore. I don't know what success is anymore. I really don't. I feel I feel like something can't not be a success. It's a blockbuster. You make a blockbuster, you sell a blockbuster, it's a blockbuster. You know what I mean? What is it?
Well, I mean, listen, it's only going to get worse because with streaming, what qualifies as success on streaming? We don't know. Most of the time they don't release the numbers.
That's the thing. There's got to be an answer. They just aren't transparent with it.
There either is, or the horrible truth really is that in a way, streaming is almost the ultimate scam from an investor perspective, where all they need to do is make the investors believe that it is successful.
Yeah.
And they don't look at the numbers too closely and of what they're spending production wise, because they are not some of these things they're not making their money
right.
If they're purely depending on our subscriptions of $8 a month.
I think a lot of streaming services, even the big ones like Netflix, still look at things based on how many new subscribers they get. Which that's got to be a bubble that will burst at some point.
Netflix also has an enormous amount of debt,
but they're too big to fail.
Exactly. Well, that's the point. Is they did that. They made themselves too big to fail. That's kind of what I think this whole. It's going to be interesting. We might even see a bubble on the streaming at some point where they sort of realize they've created something that just can't sustain itself.
Yeah,
for very long. And that's going to be a rude awakening for the 28 Star Wars series and 30 Marvel series. And
I know. Yeah, well, so that's a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, because millennial, cisgendered, heterosexual, heteronormative, white male media culture.
Where has that ever gone wrong before?
What says this more than the author Ernest Cline and Ready Player Two? Oh boy! All right, let's lay some stuff down. Okay,
he's not a millennial, right? He's a Gen Xer.
No, he's a Gen Xer for sure.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think he's writing to millennials.
I think he's writing to Gen Xers. His colleagues who grew up in the same shag-rugged homes watching G.I. Joe after school.
I agree, but I feel like there's a looking back. I mean, it's all looking back, and I think Gen Xers also had other things. There was a cynicism to being a Gen Xer, and I feel like his writing lacks cynicism, where there should be some cynicism.
Yeah. He is very, you're right. No. He's very sincere.
Yeah.
He's incredibly sincere in his writing.
Yeah. All right. So here's some ground rules. We are going to spoil the book. We're going to talk about all the elements in the book. There's a lot here. Mike read it, a month ago, 2 months ago?
Yeah, I think I finished it a few weeks ago. Yeah.
I finished it about 20 minutes ago.
The takes are going to be really hot and fresh.
I know, I could not be fresher. So we're going to talk about everything in it. Also, we're going to assume that you have read Ready Player One, the book, or at least seen the film. I actually think that this book is written in a way, almost like the Lost World book, where you could kind of just watch Ready Player One, the movie, and then read this book.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like he was because it's definitely a sequel to the first book, but I also feel like he goes out of his way to not contradict anything that they do in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just treat this as a sequel to the movie.
The only thing is the one prop, like, you know, the one corner that he was sort of drawn into, which is that Daito is dead.
Right. Well, Daito doesn't die in the film. I don't remember now.
No, he's fine.
Okay. All right. So that's a big one. All right. So here's how we'll do it. I'll start by talking about just like the sort of, not the plot, but the setup of this book, because it begins, you know, Ernest Cline's very good at world building. He's good at exposition. I mean, all he does is dump info. That's just his writing, is just info dump. But he actually, to give him some credit, he's good at exposition. He makes it readable.
Yes.
You know, I'd say 90% of his work is telling, not showing, yet somehow I think he's still kind of entertaining. So I want to explain the world of this book, and then I want to talk about the controversy around the book, just so we get that done with early, and we can move on to other things.
Yes.
All right. So again, I'm assuming that you know the story already of Ready Player One. If you don't, go listen to the Ready Player One episode, or you've probably already tuned this out.
You've gone on to other things. There are other podcasts for you to listen to.
You're
right
like,
now.
you know what, this isn't for me. And I get it. All right. So in Ready Player One, I'm not going to rehash it all, but they live in a virtual world. It's the future. The world is depleted. Life is very bad for people, and people spend the majority of the time inside a virtual reality world. In the first book, everybody wears what they call haptic wear, which are these suits and these gloves and stuff and helmets that allow you to move. And like, you know, I could be like walking in my house, but I'd be walking in the Oasis. Or, you know, they show, like, in some cases in the film, like there'll be like someone will be walking on a treadmill, but they're walking in the Oasis. And, you know, if I pick something up with my haptic glove, I could feel the pressure of the thing. Well, at the beginning of Ready Player Two, the protagonist of the first book, Wade Watts, he has won the prize. He found the 3 Easter eggs and he won the Willy Wonka prize. And now he is the owner and president of
Gregarious Games.
Yes. And those are the creators of the Oasis. And his 3 companions that were the other characters of the first book who helped him win, he made them the co-owners. That would be his girlfriend, Artemis. I'm going to just call them by their avatar names because it's already getting too confusing. His girlfriend, Artemis, who we find out at the beginning of this book, they broke up after 1 week.
As so many often do.
Yes. His best friend, H, and his friend, Shoto, whose brother was Tato, who died in the first book. Mike just talked about it.
Daito passed away. Yeah.
All right. So in the beginning of book 2, after he's won the big prize, he finds a secret, like, I guess, message from the creator, the person who bestowed on him this whole thing, like the Willy Wonka of it, Halliday.
James Halliday, yeah.
And he goes, I've created this thing, but I didn't release it because I didn't know if the world was ready for it. And now it's up to you if you want to release it or not. And basically, it is they call it ONI. It's which I forget what ONI actually stands for. But it's basically the Matrix.
Oasis Neural Interface.
Thank you, Mike. So that's ONI. You put it on your head like a helmet, and instead of being awake like you were before, now you're asleep. It's much more like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Now your body is in a sleep state and you're completely inside the Oasis. And unlike the haptic gear where you could just kind of feel things, now you have all your senses. You can smell smells, you can taste tastes, you can truly live inside the Oasis. It is a whole step up in terms of virtuality, and he decides to release it. And his girlfriend, Artemis, says this will be terrible. This will ruin the world. And that's why they break up. And she goes off to be a humanitarian and spend all of her billions in trying to make the world better. Him and everyone else in the world become ONI junkies. One of the interesting things, and this book is filled with interesting ideas that a
Yeah.
better writer would have explored.
Yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, yeah. Why don't you get through what you want to get through? Because because that's how I feel. Is that this book is just this fascinating mixed bag of bad stuff and some really fascinating, interesting concepts that he doesn't really go into.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
That's the major problem, I think. So I'm just going to finish up the intro by saying, so what happens is part of what the Oasis becomes now is these little movies, you could call them, of real world experiences. So like somebody can record themselves, doing something and upload that to the Oasis, and then I can do it. So like if you go surfing and you record that and upload it to the Oasis, if I have the ONI set up, I can watch it, and it won't just be me watching through your eyes. I will feel the board underneath. I will feel the coolness of the beach. I will experience surfing. And people become addicted to this, and Artemis is right. It becomes a real problem. So that leads into the controversy of the book, okay, which has been really the only thing people have talked about in reviews.
Yeah.
It's the thing that they sort of zoned in on, and I understand why. Early on in the book, about in the first quarter of the book, Wade now, because he is the, he's
got all these special powers within the Oasis realm.
Yeah, more than his partners do.
Yeah, he has like a robe that gives him invisibility, and it allows him to kind of do whatever literally whatever he wants and never be caught.
He can go into any of your file. He can watch you through your cameras. He's really loathsome at the beginning of this book. And I think the author thinks that he redeems himself throughout the story, and I don't know if he does.
Well, not for what he does that specifically we're dealing with in terms of the controversy.
Right. So he gets so there's oh my god, there's so much. All right, so there's a new, of course, in the second book there's a new puzzle, which we'll get into later. But anyway, we won't deal with that now. The new puzzle, he's completely stumped. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not even really working on it. He put out a $1 billion prize. If you have a clue on how to solve the new puzzle to help me, I'll give you $1 billion. So this young woman who goes by Karen, people have already tuned out.
I know. Sorry. That's the problem. Like, also, if just in case you're already confused, this book basically is like a tale of two books. There's a moment like this book kind of splits in the middle and becomes a different book. The first half of the book is this totally different thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But basically at the end of the day, there is essentially this trans woman who offers him help in solving the first puzzle. She figures it out, but she actually can't do anything about it. What happened was he only discovered she was trans because he goes into her old school records and sees that she is marked as designated male at birth.
Yeah.
And so that's when, through his spying, he has essentially determined that she is trans. And also ultimately in the book, there's descriptions of, immediately after this, he's like, oh, she's trans. I didn't expect that. Well, also, like, I'm comfortable in my sexuality about it because now I'm so, I don't even know if polyamorous is the right word. Like, because it's really, he makes this statement that's basically like, I've experienced sex in all genders, and therefore, like, sex to me is like, I just realized it's all about love. Love is love is love is love.
Right. So this is the thing. This book could have just not, the character could have just not been trans, and he wouldn't have got himself into trouble. But Cline is trying to do something that he's just not smart enough to do here.
That is the whole, like, it's amazing because at the same time that I am proud of him for trying to make these steps forward and also, like, what you can tell here is this is a guy who read the reviews for his book and especially took to heart the many criticisms that he got over the years for the comparisons to Gamergate, for the connections to that. He's probably a fairly liberal-minded dude who at least is like, I don't want to be that. Like, that's not like, I don't want to be associated with these like Nazi creeps. No, like that's,
and I think the real problem is even though he says love is love, he kind of screws up because he just sounds like he doesn't know what he's talking about. I've got to let him speak for himself here. Let me just read this passage.
Yeah, go ahead.
My chest felt hollow. By the way, while he's reading her records, he's watching her sleep through her own camera. So it's such a weird invasion.
Oh wait, I thought it was that he was watching. Sorry, not that it's any better.
Yeah.
I thought he was spying on her and her friends talking at like a.
She does do that, but then he wants to see what she really looks like, and he
I didn't know that.
her camera, and he sees her actual body in the real world sleeping with a Snoopy blanket on it.
Guys, come on! Like it's not hard to. Sorry, why is it so hard to not write guys creeping on girls while they're sleeping? Like, what is this?
I know.
This was never a thing in my life until, like, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it.
All right, here he goes. I closed all of the VidFeed windows and scanned Skylar's user profile for more information about her. Skylar is her real name. Her school records indicated a scan of her birth certificate, which revealed another surprise. She'd been DMAB, designated male at birth. Discovering this minor detail didn't send me spiraling into a sexual identity crisis the way it probably would have back when I was younger. Thanks to years of surfing on the Oni net, I now knew what it felt like to be all kinds of different people, having all kinds of different sex. I'd experienced sex with women while being another woman, and sex with men as both a woman and a man. I'd done playback of several different flavors of straight and gay and non-binary sex. Just out of pure curiosity, I'd come away with the same realization that most Oni users came away with. Passion was passion and love was love, regardless of who the participants involved were or what sort of body they were assigned at birth. Well-meaning, his heart's in the right place.
Yeah,
there's some big errors. First of all, there's no such thing as non-binary sex.
Swing and a miss.
A lot of people on Twitter are like, oh, you gotta love that non-binary sex, whatever the fuck that is. And also, even though he says love is love, he's kind of saying, oh, I know what it's like to be trans because I fucked people. Like, he's still grounding it in sex, not identity, which is the major problem here. It's kind of like, hey, I'm evolved. I understand being trans. Where clearly the writer and the character doesn't understand what being trans means because you're reducing it to being about sex, not identity. And look, I get it. I get it. I get if you're upset by this. I get if you say, this made me dislike the book. I totally respect that. And I'm by no means defending him. I'm just saying, this, and actually a lot of the even more complex sci-fi ideas in the book are just out of this man's grasp. The first book was fun and stupid. This book, he tries to be smarter and he just really fails.
Yeah, who is the editor? Like, I'm sorry. I just can't imagine it. It's rough, you know, when you have such a big best-selling book that like comes out of nowhere, you know, you're sort of like, oh no. And there's I'm being asked to write a sequel and I have no idea what to, like, I have no ideas where to go forward.
Right.
Because everything I wrote was just for this. It was written for just one book. So like when you're left with that, you know, what do you do in the sequel?
And you probably have editors that are less hard on you because
the editor's probably
a success.
Yeah. But I also just wonder, I don't know, just as an editor, I can't imagine sitting there feeling like, you know, that this book just doesn't flow.
Well, you know, when he wrote that, he was like, nailed it, did it. Because we should say one of the criticisms in the first book is the character H. H's avatar is a male, but then at the end, when the characters meet in the real world for the first time, Wade sees that H is actually a female. And people criticize that because people like, that's not really trans. Like what, like he kind of is, what is he getting at? And I think that is what, and I say she was female because the character H isn't trans. The character H just enjoys playing with a male avatar.
Well, also it was mentioned, I remember, I think in the first book, that basically H is a black woman, and then in terms of trying to protect herself to some degree. The character says that by choosing a male avatar and by essentially pretending to be a male in this, let's be honest, like it's a video game. It is essentially a video game space.
Right.
So being a male in a video game space affords you privilege or affords you a certain amount of protection from harassment that you would not have, that you may experience if you're a woman in a video game male believe, or at least assumed male dominated space, what have you.
So in terms of political correctness, H was the heart of the controversy of the first book. Most of the other criticisms of the first book are just that it's pandering and lame and it's just references.
It's a lot of references.
It is. I mean, I was thinking, if you didn't know what he's talking about, this book would mean nothing to you. Nothing. If you didn't have the media literacy that he's writing towards, if you haven't seen John Hughes movies or played video games, or like, this would mean nothing to you.
I was going to say, well, here's the interesting thing, though. I would say this: the first book, actually, so the movie, my enjoyment of the movie is so great that it made me forget about problems I had with the book, and things that annoyed me, or the things that I noticed with the book is, man, I forgot how deep cut those references were.
Yeah.
Even the first book. So like, like the whole first key he gets from playing Joust.
Yeah.
A game that I only saw one time at an arcade, but like I get for a particular generation, like Joust is a thing. I'm trying to remember what was like. I mean,
it's weird, the movie and the book have different things. There are different references, which are based on what's more cinematic and also what licenses they could get.
And also the thing that's interesting is with the movie tried to concentrate on character. That was the thing. The book really was more about the references and solving the puzzles within the reference. The movie was more about like whatever these references are that are being made, they're ultimately all in service of, this is something about James Halliday as a person.
Right.
Either something he wanted or something he didn't do or some regret he had. This was a means of like expressing, his kind of processing of that to some degree. And that's sort of what I like about the movie better, is it focuses more on character than the book does. But what's interesting about this book is he kind of tries to not so much he does do a little bit of retconning, but like he does try to do that, to approach this idea of the clues and everything that they're going to be solving has to do with character now.
Yes. Right. Even the puzzle this time around is revealing more of the character of Halliday and the character of Kira, who was the woman Halliday was obsessed over, more than the first book does.
Yeah. I was gonna say the first book makes it sound like a kind of harmless crush.
Yeah. And I guess we'll bring up the things we dislike and the things we like.
Well,
and
also, sorry, wait, before we even do that, let's also just explain to the audience that, like, in case you haven't read, like, book divides like this. First half of the book is basically world building and explaining how this new world works with the Oni headsets, how it's changed people, how it's changed our main character, Parzival, and also it just sets up also like a lot of other world building stuff, like the state of the world is incredibly bad. Parzival is secretly building a spaceship to basically take
an ark.
Like an ark, like a Noah's Ark kind of thing. It's bizarre, but it's interesting. Like you're sort of like, okay, where are we going here?
Right.
And then you just hit this midpoint where all of a sudden, so his solving of this, he finds out that he has this new set of clues to solve. And once he starts solving them, this AI of James Halliday comes out of basically nowhere and forces him to solve the rest of the remaining 6 clues in less than 24 hours.
Right. And he's a real mustache twirling villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a weird tonal shift. And it's a way to try to up the stakes, because if you wear the Oni helmet for longer than 12 hours, you can get brain damage. Yeah. And he has taken the whole Oasis hostage. If Wade and his friends don't solve the second puzzle for him, all of these people will die or become brain damaged.
Yeah, including Wade himself. Like the whole, yeah, that's the thing. It becomes the ticking clock for the story, which, like, it does provide some degree of drama, but to a certain degree, it just kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah.
And what also disappointed me was you get the sense at that point, Wade brings up that, James Halliday showed him the big red button, that if he pushes it, the Oasis disappears. And so because he brings it up at the beginning, and he explicitly says that, like, I could basically never get rid of the Oasis because so much of the world's, governments and economics and everything is tied into the Oasis. If I ever push that button, the world would collapse.
Yeah.
So Chekhov's gun, yeah, he's going to push that big red button.
Right. And to jump all the way to the ending, he doesn't. And I really wanted him to. I really wanted this book to end with him realizing the folly of his ways and go, you know what? This has all been bad for the world. I'm going to maybe not even press the big red button, but I'm going to end the Oasis. They do something in the movie. I don't remember if it's in the first book or not. It can't be. It's in the movie. In the movie where he says that there are 2 days that the Oasis are closed.
Yeah.
To try to create more balance in the world. That's not in this book. I really wanted him to end the Oasis. I really wanted that to be the ending.
Well, that's what you thought. Like, you're reading that you think, especially as he's describing, like, basically how bad things are, and that in a sense, he even realizes, despite the fact he can't say it, that the Oni headsets are like the ultimate opiate for the masses.
Right.
This is just because people can use it to, like, I want to emphasize, like, like Mike said, you can use it to taste or to smell. So, like, people who might be starving or not have access to much food can get to enjoy the sensations of eating, and even though, like, in reality they are starving.
Yeah, to give you a perfect example of what could be an interesting idea and then he cops out, is at one point he describes drugs through the Oni net, and he says you can watch an Oni file or experience an Oni file of somebody doing heroin, and it'll feel like you're doing heroin. And I go, ooh, that's interesting. But then he goes, but don't worry, because it's the Oni net. Even though it feels like real heroin, you can't become addicted. And I was like, well, then why introduce an interesting idea? How and also that's also a very stupid definition of addiction, making only a chemical. Like, if you can really go and experience the high of heroin, how are people not going to become addicted to that, whether or not there's actual heroin in your system?
The only thing I could think of is that, technically speaking, it doesn't give you the actual physical dependency. Yes, you may feel the pleasure in your brain, and, like, you may want to continue to revisit that sensation, but you don't get the other chemical dependency side of it.
People become addicted to gambling and sex and weed and all sorts of other things that don't have a chemical component.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an example of an interesting idea that he doesn't explore.
Yeah, and that's the thing with this book, is that there are just really interesting sections where he creates this interesting kind of science fiction world, and that he seems to be going in that direction of, we're going to push the big red button, we're going to destroy the Oasis, like, and the whole idea I assumed being, oh, this is going to be the wake-up call. This is the wake-up call to not to him as a character, but to the world at large, that, like, we have been sleeping through our problems, akin to the ending of WALL-E.
Yes.
But we don't get there.
No, we don't get there.
We get almost the opposite.
Yeah, actually, I know. Yeah, you're right. We do almost get the opposite, because in the end they introduce an even crazier sci-fi idea, like it's totally not bonkers.
Well, I think what's also okay. Sorry, to talk about that more, you don't realize it until, like, okay, so the very last chapter of the book, you find out that the whole book has also been told from the perspective not of our main character, but of, more exposition. When you put on the ONI headset, a digital copy of your entire brain is made. And essentially, he says that you basically could make a copy of a person.
Right, an AI based on a person's whole memory.
Yeah, and so Wade makes an AI copy of, like, him and his friends who all use the OniNet, and lets that AI, all those AIs together, go on a spaceship that they were going to use to be the Ark to save humanity.
Yeah.
To then just go off and go looking for a place for humans to eventually move to.
In the end, we see that we haven't actually been reading a story narrated to us by Wade, but by Wade's AI. At one point he goes, and that's where me and Wade split. And now Wade is on Earth and I'm his AI. And it's like,
did we need that?
No, not only is it like a further hat on a hat on a hat on a hat. He talks about like, this is the end of death. This is post-humanism. And it's like, if you've ever, I kind of was into post-humanism for a while because I had a time in like when I was in graduate school where I got really into a lot of that kind of like theory and stuff. And like all of this stuff is not happy-go-lucky. Like you look at something more complex like Ghost in the Shell or like Vanilla Sky or like, or like The Matrix or like Existence. And they talk about how like this is all bad. This will all lead to this is a problem. Oh God, what was her name?
Who?
The crap. I'm trying to think. There's a scholar who wrote an interesting book about post-humanism, where she basically says like a human mind without a human body is not a human mind. So you can't live forever because your consciousness, if was detached from your body, would become something else. But this book kind of makes like, nah, we're just a copy and we live in the spaceship computer and everything's simple. All these giant ideas are simple.
Everything's fine. Like that's the other thing too. Yeah, it really is like everything's fine. Like our friends who died now get to live again as AI.
The book I'm referring to is How We Became Post-Human, Virtual Bodies in Cybernetics, Literature, and Informatics by N. Catherine Hales. An interesting piece of theory and criticism that takes these ideas seriously. Oh, boy.
And sorry, also so like is part of the bonkers plotting of this. And also as his means of, again, we mentioned before, like, this is his attempt at a mea culpa, this book. Like, this is attempted him, like, trying to kind of say, I'm sorry for other things.
Yeah.
Makes James Halliday a complete monster, like, totally changes him as a character from what he was in the first book.
Right. But I gotta say, I kind of liked that. That's what I liked.
I did too. Well, here's actually the thing. I liked that idea, but I didn't necessarily love the execution. Like, what I thought was going to happen was, because here's the thing, the AI of James Halliday is really the monster that we see.
Right. Not the real James Halliday.
That's the problem. Yeah. We never, because we get all these. So by the way, the plot of the book that we haven't even gotten to.
I know.
Is that James Halliday leaves him another challenge with 7 clues.
If you're driving listening to this, please pull over. I don't want you to fall asleep and
in
a tree.
Please stay safe, folks. So he says, I'm leaving you this new set of 7 clues. You have to solve this puzzle to put together, essentially to put together. And what he doesn't know that it'll do is that it will bring out the AI copy of the woman that James Halliday was in love with, but never acted on, and that his buddy was in love with, and like who she was married to. So I don't know why she needed to be like the ultimate Princess Zelda that you have to like put together or whatever.
Right. And essentially we have a book where we've got a creepy protagonist executing a quest created by another creepy man based on this woman that he loved and was obsessed with, but didn't love him. And also he didn't really love her. He didn't really know her. He was obsessed with her. And so like the whole
it's dirty.
I know the some of the fun simplicity of the first book and movie where you're like, oh, it's like Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
That's sort of gone because this one's mired in so much like ickiness.
Oh my God. Sorry. I don't know why. I just see David Fincher sitting there like reading this being like, this is so perverse. This is even dirtier than Vertigo. This is some messed up stuff.
It is. It's funny you say Vertigo. That's a really good thing to think about in terms of this.
It kind of is a whole thing about memory,
right?
And changing a woman to suit your sort of needs. It's
also crazy because like in the first book, one of my complaints was I never understand why Artemis falls in love with him other than she's the girl in the book.
Yes.
And Spielberg kind of made it a little bit make more sense in the film.
Yeah.
But then in the second book, he's still in love with her and she doesn't care about him anymore because he fucked up and he released the Oni net and she didn't want that to happen. And I feel like Cline is trying to do the thing where he is trying to reflect Halliday's obsession with Wade's obsession, but he doesn't realize that he's doing it on a level that makes them both look bad, not make them both look good. Like, yes, they are both creepy, but I think you think that one is making the other look better.
It's also like, as much as it was hard to stomach that Artemis, or like hard to believe that Artemis would fall in love with Wade in the first book, it is even harder to believe that she would fall back in love with him in this second book.
And it happens so...
Exactly.
We're on an adventure. It's just like shitty 80s movie. Hey, guess what? It's, like every...
It's the third act. You're the girl.
It's like Kate Capshaw in Temple of Doom. It's just like, yeah, I like you now. Because when you... Or a better example might be Anakin and Padme in episode 2. Like, going on an adventure will make a woman fall in love with you. It's like she hates this guy for real good moral reasons. But now they're back on an adventure and she's going to fall for him again. And it's like, why? This guy sucks. The only reason you're on this adventure is because his negligence led to this crazy AI doing this. You were right. This proves you right.
I also can't remember like what the incident is that actually brings the AI to life. Like, what's the...
I think finding the first shard.
It was finding the first shard?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't... Because that was the thing. While you're reading this, one of the parts of the clue is that each time he gets a shard, he has to, quote, pay a toll.
Yeah.
So after the first shard, this AI is released and, he becomes like the big bad. So that makes sense. Like, oh, he did something and like now something is arguably being taken away from him. Okay. So with each clue, we're going to lose something, right? Like each clue, there's going to be something that makes this more difficult. Nope. The paying the toll is he gets to experience an ONI memory of, again, this woman that James Halliday was in love with or was obsessed with. And it is a memory associated with the place where they solved the clue, that the only reason it exists is because this creepazoid put the helmet on her and didn't tell her that it was going to make this kind of copy that would allow anybody to experience the memories that she had experienced.
Yeah. It's like the book thinks that what it's saying is seeing the world through somebody else's eyes will give you empathy. But what the book is really saying is, if you're privileged, you can hijack anybody's eyes. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like, because those moments where he will jump into Kira's body, which is him paying the toll, it's supposed to help Wade understand who Kira was as a person. And therefore it was Halliday was understanding who she was as a person. But it really just feels like another weird invasion.
Yet none of the clues give you deeper insight into any of the characters. And that's what bothers me the most.
And it's because Cline cannot write females other than Manic Pixie Dream Girls. That's all he can do.
See, but I don't even think it's just that. I don't know. Like, it just feels like he doesn't, I don't know if he's not interested or what, but like, yeah, we never, like, again, this is arguably something that could be interesting, that he is getting to see through Kira's eyes, like getting to see the world, understanding more of who she is as a person, understanding maybe more of what a jackass Halliday was as a person, and maybe even getting to know Ogden Morrow a little better. Like, all of this could have lent to that, instead of what it really ends up being, which is references to other things, and you're seeing the memory of the time that she saw these other things for the first time. So AKA, there's a video game clue. So, you see her getting to play that video game. She had Prince sing to her on a birthday.
Right.
And so you get to see that night when Prince sang to her. And like, oh yeah, by the way, some of these clues are like, I don't think he made them with the intention of them ever being in a movie. He just made the stuff that he wanted to see. Because there's no way they will ever get the rights to just about just about any of the clues that he designs.
No. I mean, that's what ends up happening in the first book too. A lot of the actual tasks that he goes through in the first book are changed in the film.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole nother level of criticism, and you said this to me when we were talking earlier this week. At least for you and I, in terms of our interests, the tasks in the second book are not as interesting as the tasks in the first book.
No.
There's a whole task about Prince, and they go to a Prince planet and fight princes. I'm not that into Prince. I'm not that into music. There's a Lord of the Rings planet. There's
it's a Lord
John
of the Rings
Hughes planet.
Okay, it's a Lord of the Rings planet, but what does he focus on? The Silmarillion, which only my dad and the truest Lord of the Rings nerds read.
And my dad.
Yeah.
And my dad. Only our dads have read.
Only our dads have read. It's one of those dad books. It's up there with any book about World War II. Yeah. The Silmarillion.
I know, it's not even a novel. It's not even like The Hobbit. At one point somebody says, will there be hobbits there? And he's like, no, this is before the hobbits. This is the first age. And it's like,
you took away the thing that people love. People love hobbits. People love Lord of the Rings. If you referenced that and had a big battle, we probably would have been okay with it. Instead, you're talking about these wolf monsters that I have no idea what you're talking about.
And the story that they're living through is what the Led Zeppelin song Stairway to Heaven is based on. So I kept waiting for them to make that obvious reference, and they don't. I'm like, what? Why couldn't you make the one reference you don't make?
And what's sad is one of the ones that he does make that, I for all intents and purposes enjoyed to some degree, his whole going to the planet Shermer and getting to experience all the John Hughes films and seeing those houses and all that's really cool. Right. For me as a John Hughes fan, and even the clue itself is pretty cool. I didn't know that Robert Downey Jr. was going to play Ducky, and it is one of those things if you imagine if Robert Downey Jr. was Ducky, then she would have wound up with Ducky.
It would have made more sense for her to wind up with Ducky.
Yeah,
because the chemistry would have been different.
And it's Robert Downey Jr. Even young RDJ, it makes sense. No disrespect to John Cryer, but that's there is something interesting more about that because I in part because I know most of those films, but I don't know. There's something more fun and playful,
right?
With that.
I feel that way too, but also there's something deeper there, and because there's something problematic about John Hughes movies that they don't get at. You have H, who is an African-American character, who's also gay, who makes a few jokes about there are no black people here. And other than those few jokes, they don't examine the problems with some John Hughes movies. And it's how can you make, here's the problem. He's trying to make Ready Player 2 more woke because he realizes that the first book wasn't woke and people were mad. But when you base your whole world around 80s pop culture shit, none of that shit is woke.
Well, okay.
So how are you gonna
not to totally derail this, but I think we got to talk about it because you kind of just brought it up.
Sure.
The cultural over-reverence to the 80s that exists and that permeates our culture is a problem. It is a huge problem. And I am always bewildered by it. Look, I am somebody who grew up in the shadow of that culture. I grew up in the 90s. And I'll be I was born in the late 80s. So all of this was there and present and for me to engage with. But when I grew up, I have to say there's a lot of stuff from the 80s I've never watched. There's a lot of stuff I've never engaged with. And seeing people's devoutness to it, especially even people my age, the 30-somethings, the 40-somethings, their devoutness to this era of the 80s as a golden era for culture, a golden era for movies, for music, for television, for children's entertainment, that this was the height of popular culture. And this is the best we could ever have achieved. And everything else kind of pales in comparison is something I do not understand.
I mean, the idea is that I guess Halliday created the Oasis as he wanted it. But again, you can examine that in a deeper way of this straight nerdy guy created the world based on what he wanted it to be. And therefore he has literal control over culture because there's no other culture.
Yeah, apparently we stopped doing stuff once the Oasis came out.
Yeah, and there's nothing, and it's also commercial. Like there's no references to like smaller things, like indie things. It's all like Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and Star Wars. And by the way, all of these things are meaningless. They're all just data. Like they all are everybody's favorite everything. The amount of times in the book they say this was his favorite book, this was his favorite movie. It's like everything can't be everyone's favorite. You can't tell me that Pretty in Pink is exactly the same as The Empire Strikes Back, is exactly the same as Back to the Future. Like these are different things, but they've all become meaningless. And there's a few references in this book to later things, like they reference the current Doctor Who. And it's like, okay, well, that's in 2020. Are there other things from the 2000s that you're into?
Yeah, he drops some, so I remember being intrigued at the beginning of the book because he dropped some 90s references in there, like some random things from the 90s.
Yeah.
Which surprised me. I felt like, oh, wow. Oh, maybe he's moving on to, nope, we're going right back to the 80s. Okay.
Maybe there's something natural about this. In the 70s and 80s, there was a sort of obsession with the 50s. Like maybe Ready Player One is for us what like Happy Days was for people in the 70s
in the
and
70s,
80s.
yeah.
But just like Happy Days, what you're taking out is all of the political strife and all of, when you talk about the 80s was the best time ever, not for people with AIDS, not for women or gay people or black people or and just like the 50s, God, the 50s was terrible for most people.
Well, but what's interesting is that there is and this is, I think this is as a result of like years of kind of Reagan worshiping and what have you. But there's also this perception that the 80s was like an economically prosperous time. And if you really look into it, the 80s was not an economically prosperous time. Reagan almost lost in 84 because of how little he had actually done for the economy. Mm-hmm. It had stalled. The minimum wage hadn't been raised. People were really still struggling. He truly was a great actor. He could sell to you the perception that America was advancing.
Yeah.
When the only thing we were actually really advancing, I mean, in part, like he was advancing in terms of the Cold War, in terms of just outspending the Russians to the point where he could end it in theory. Like that's really it.
There was a lot of macho bullshit that came out of a response to everything that happened in Vietnam, from like Rambo to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies to He-Man to wrestling. There became this obsession with like toxic masculinity and being a strong man.
Well, it was the worst like foreign policy decision ever.
Yeah.
It rivaled by the Iraq War. Like it is, when you really break down the Vietnam War, and like, so also if anybody here has not sat down and watched Ken Burns' The Vietnam War, fantastic. It is amazing. It is for a thing that's 17 hours long, like it's riveting. You're there through it all. And it gives you a really thorough perspective on basically how it was something that got ballooned out of control. It was not a war, because technically speaking, Congress never declared war on Vietnam. This was a issue. Again, I said this was foreign policy. They sent troops that they called advisors to Vietnam to advise on the situation. And of course, like it just increased and increased and increased to the point where what it really amounted to was they could not leave Vietnam, because what it said was, is by leaving Vietnam, you are allowing communism to spread, and therefore democracy is losing. It's this really it's a false perceptive narrative.
Why is there no Ken Burns planet in the Oasis?
It's everything in black and white photos, and
everything's just soft pans and stuff.
But Peter Coyote and David Keith just.
But that's the thing. The history is complicated, and nothing in this book is complicated. Like this book.
Sorry, I need to amend. It's not David Keith. It's Keith David.
Yes.
Common mistake. Mistake.
Big difference.
Huge.
I was thinking when I was reading this book, this is kind of an interesting world. Maybe it would be better if the author gave it away. Like, what if he gave it to a young author of a different perspective, maybe someone who's not him, who's not, a Gen X white dude, maybe some interesting things would happen. One of my favorite sci-fi authors right now is Charlie Jane Anders, who is a trans woman. And by far, her books and stories are way better than Cline's. Yet he is super famous, and movies have been made of his books, and none of her stuff has been made into a movie. And I just think, like, I was thinking, like, what if Charlie Jane Anders had written this book? How much cooler would it be? How much more interesting would it be?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like I mean, yeah, it is one of these things. Sorry, because I'm thinking about it from almost like a public domain perspective, where it would be really interesting to see, like, when you release this into public domain, like, what happens. Does it become a text that further just has people obsessing with popular culture from their own childhoods, or does it become something where we can explore these more complicated issues of people who do get, like, hooked on, essentially, especially within this book with the ONI headsets, like people who are getting hooked on experiences, hooked on experiencing it through others, but not through themselves. What does that do to a person? And especially, like, not to get too deep or anything, but, like, think about our present pandemic life.
Yeah.
Where we're really not experiencing much. We're in a very sensory deprivation time more than anything. And so there is this interesting question of, like, how is this going to affect us as a society?
Well, I was thinking about how, like, at the beginning of the pandemic, the video game Animal Crossing became really, really popular. And that is...
people love that game.
I just started playing it because I'm late with everything. But that is a virtual world, not like the Oasis, but that is a virtual little world. I mean, I'm not the first person to make this joke, but one of the interesting things about Animal Crossing is you can take out a loan and pay it back. And what a fantasy. Like, I paid off my house. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, I mean, like, the book will make references to the world's running out of food and the world sucks. But it's like, it doesn't care enough to really examine that. It's like both the characters and the author are much more interested in escapism.
Yeah, it's weird. It's this whole, like, he makes it sound like it's a bad thing to some degree. Like, he has the characters admit, like, it's a bad thing that we're obsessed with this escapism and the escapism of the Oasis, but then never takes the next step and says, we need to change the Oasis in a major way, or we need to destroy the Oasis, like, seeing it for the problem that it is. Instead, it's viewed as sort of like, well, this is what we got, and it's too late for systemic change. Like, we're stuck with it.
I know. And the lead character is a mediocre white man who made a terrible mistake for the world, but hey, the girl fell back in love with him, and
he's incredibly rich.
Right.
And never has to work in a day in his life. Really doesn't have to. He's going to be all right. He's going to be all right. He has a mansion with many bedrooms that nobody sleeps in.
Yes.
And this is a world with a lot of homeless people.
I know. It's like both the character and the author have a lot of privilege. That it's like, are you aware of your privilege? What do you think could have made this a better book?
I definitely think, to some degree, simplify. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Part of it is just, it's weird. Because, like, I mean, I don't think you could call it Ready Player 2, but he could have done a book in this same world and either A, have just completely dropped the idea that this is sort of a puzzle solving, reference thing. Like, it's funny. This is almost it's the Hangover sequel problem.
Yeah.
The Hangover is a movie that just works on its own. There's nothing to sequelize, nothing to do. But when they're forced into sequels, they make two different kinds. The first sequel, which is just basically, we're going to do the same thing again. And that's kind of what this book does. Like, at least half this book is like, we're just going to do the same thing again. And then the other side is just try something totally crazy. Right. I don't know. Like, I think he could have done something where it is more about the characters, about them maybe struggling to deal with the problems of the Oasis, maybe them realizing that there is something wrong with it without even introducing the LNI headset, really starting to realize that this is an opiate for the masses, and that hopefully with the privilege of feeling like, okay, I don't need the ONI headset to live. I don't need this to be my only experiencing of life, that they could then have the realization, like, how do we start to fix these problems? And then the challenge of the book is, I mean, there's something interesting there that all of a sudden it becomes a book about a private company then trying to influence public policy in a really complicated way. And now I'm sure, though, as I say that, 100 people just fell asleep. Because the thought of going from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to, a book about public policy that would thrill Ezra Klein, like, really does not speak to the Gen Pop, as it were.
I think if I were to make this book better, I would do one of, kind of like what you said. I do one or two things. I'd either simplify it. I would take out the larger things because they are so interesting and they are so existentially interesting that if you're not going to explore them, don't have them. Let it just be more candy. Let it be candy like the first book is candy. This book tries to be more than candy, but he can't handle it. Or the second way, and I was thinking this actually when I read it, the transgender character Skylar, or her avatar Lohegrin or whatever, her and her friends are young and they're not rich and they're anyways, let them be the protagonists.
That's the thing also, not for nothing. He sets them up and you're kind of waiting for that, or you're waiting for basically like H and Shoto and Artemis to not be around. And so then this is his new group of friends who goes on, the adventure with him. Like, you're kind of, it seems like you're set up for that. And then instead, like, she pretty much gets pushed to the side.
Right. He just uses her to do these side tasks that we don't see her do.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, exactly. And so it's sort of like, why bring them up at all?
I also want to say, in that hypothetical, even though that would be a more interesting book, I don't think Ernest Cline should write a book where the protagonist is transgendered. Not because I want less transgendered characters, that's not it at all, but that story needs to come from a transgendered writer.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, because that's the thing. Like, if
he wanted to do that, give it to a transgender writer and go, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but perhaps you do. Enjoy.
Well, isn't that the interesting thing, that like he almost could have modeled this into his own franchise? And we think about how franchises are existing right now. The idea that, like, you might have a primary storyline, but then you allow different creators to then go off and sort of play in the sandbox in their own way.
There's so much to do in the Oasis. He did build. I mean, world building is what he's good at. He's better at that than he is character and story. So, like, that's why I say let him give it to somebody else and let them, write. How about a cool book of short stories that take place in the Oasis from different authors? That would be awesome.
And wait a minute. So also, not for nothing, like, if we're all going to call him like a lazy writer, not for nothing, if he was truly lazy, how did we not wind up on a Jurassic Park planet? You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't go for the obvious references that I bet if he did more of those, we actually might have more fun.
Right.
Like,
well, I think with his involvement with Spielberg now, that would feel too much.
I get, yeah, but like, I don't know, like the John Hughes thing made sense. Right. The John Hughes planet, like, that makes sense. But like going to the Cimmerian, that just is like, okay, I get it, sir. Like, put on your tweed sweater.
Right. Well, he's still trying to get nerd cred, and it's like, dude, you're in your like 40s or whatever. Like, I get it. We get it. You wrote Ready Player One. Like, I believe that you're a nerd. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, or even go into, like, I don't know, kind of fun, obscure stuff. Like, what if he went to a planet with, or like he had to do something where it would involve like the Super Sentai version of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which, side note, there's a really amazing documentary on the Super Sentai Spider-Man that's on Disney Plus.
Really? What's it called?
Yeah. Give me a sec. I gotta look, because like Marvel did this.
Watch that immediately.
Yeah, I here's the thing. I just stumbled on it. Disney just did this thing where they did a bunch of essentially like 70-minute like short docs about different things in Marvel.
I tell you, the most interesting stuff on Disney Plus is hidden.
Yeah, it yes, correct. Okay, so yeah, here it is. So it's called Marvel 616.
Okay.
That's the name of this like series. And so it just has a bunch of short docs all covering different topics. Like I'm just looking at it right now. So yeah, the first one is the Japanese Spider-Man, which
Awesome.
it's a little long, but like it's interesting because not for like I'll be honest, I am shocked that it exists. That something that so just like for me, I didn't know that Japanese Spider-Man existed until 5 years ago. I was at Otakon,
Mm.
which is an anime convention that was in Baltimore and now is in DC. I just went into a panel and they were talking about like Japanese adaptations of American
Right.
superhero stuff,
And
and like
people should
this.
know it's not just the translation. It's localized to Japan. Like he
Oh,
has a giant robot. Like it is not the Spider-Man story They took the idea and made it their own. And it's super interesting.
yeah, and the documentary is great. It's a good time. And so I haven't gotten to watch all these yet, but like they do one about women in Marvel Comics. They
I have to point something out though. I
Yeah.
do think that Super Sentai Spider-Man's like robot was in the final battle in the first book.
Oh,
It's not in
maybe.
the movie. In the movie, there's a Gundam.
No. I thought that was okay, yes, the Gundam, but the Gundam is in the movie and the Gundam replaces Ultraman.
All right. Oh boy.
It replaces Ultraman because apparently Ultraman's rights are sort of split between two owners and they couldn't get both to sign on.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
went with Gundam, which is another property that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
Gundam, and I maybe watched one Ultraman movie as a kid, but like I really don't know Ultraman.
Another way we can look at this whole series is it's just a further extension of the licensing culture we live in. It's like Funko Pop the movie. It's like here's stuff. You like stuff? You know what I mean? Like whether you're buying it on socks or the Funko or in a book where characters play as them. It's further that. It's IP is just this intellectual property is just this sort of stack of gold that all the giant corporation dragons are laying on top of, and they will just keep selling it to us.
Well, also, I just, again, as I said before, like I don't understand the obsession with the '80s, and this like false memory of it as this glorious time and everything. Uh,
There's actually a part in the book that I kind of loved, and it's the villain from the first movie, Sorrento. He is
Comes back as the sidekick.
Yeah, he's working with the bad guy of the new book. And this is what he says to the kids. He took a menacing step towards us, but we all held our ground. Don't you kids ever get tired of picking through the wreckage of a past generation's nostalgia? He stretches arms out wide. I mean, look around. The entire oasis is just one giant graveyard, haunted by the undead pop culture icons of a bygone era. A crazy old man shrine to a bunch of pointless crap. That's the villain talking, but part of me was like, yeah, I kind of like he makes a point.
he's got a good point. Why isn't anybody listening to him?
He has a point. And the fact he says, like, yeah, it's just some crazy old guy's fucking obsessions, and you're all obsessed with it.
Yeah, and I mean, also that kind of comments on just even, I mean, that comments on like the larger idea that because Halliday was in that position of privilege, he was able to define essentially the canon and
Right.
defined what is and isn't important. And in a world with this sort of heavy poverty and less education, and especially media literacy, like you don't have people questioning that to some degree and almost blindly accepting that Halliday's perception of culture is the way to go. And also weirdly, not for nothing, this doesn't the book take place in like 2049 or 2050?
I honestly, I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember the dates, but even so, like even if it takes place, let's say in the 2030s, Halliday, I get it. Like as a kid, he's heavily he's influenced as a kid by the stuff that he grew up with in the 80s. But are you telling me then to him like popular culture stopped in 1989?
Right? He never got into anything else. He never got into anything bigger or more meaty.
Yeah, it just seems weird that like the reference, like it just stops cold at the end of the 80s and that there's like nothing else for him or that interests him beyond that.
Yeah. Well, sort of beginning to wrap this up. This might
Yeah.
sound like an odd turn, but I actually enjoyed this book. But
I just think it's a mixed bag. It's just interesting.
I agree with you on that. But you know, the actual act of it, I enjoyed it. And I think I said this exact thing about the first book. How could I not? It is engineered for me to enjoy it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, of course I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy it the way that I just enjoy, you know, it's like, I enjoy it the same way I enjoy like following an Instagram that just has pictures of old like action figures from the 80s. Like, it's like, you know, it hits all my nostalgia buttons. As a story, is it very good? No. Are the characters very good? No. I actually think it's his worst book. I've read all three of his books. Ready Player One, Armada. Armada is basically it's the same shit. It's basically like Last Starfighter. Like a kid is really good at video games, and because of that, he can go and like you know, actually fight the bad guys or whatever.
Is it any? I'm just curious. Like, is it any good? I haven't read it.
I enjoyed it.
Okay, because I like the Last Starfighter.
It's better than Ready Player Two. Ready Player Two is his worst book for sure, for sure. And then years ago, he wrote a movie that is awful called Fanboys.
He wrote Fanboys?
Yeah, the movie about the kids that are trying to see episode 1.
Oh wow, yeah.
Also, yeah, and it's weird because it's trying to be like a Kevin Smith movie, and it's also full of homophobic jokes. That movie's so bad.
So that movie's okay. Yeah, that movie is bad. The only thing that I mean, I'm not trying to redeem it, but like that movie also, you know, we've only seen like the 90-minute cut. That movie was originally much longer, and I think they had to use different. Like, I don't know, that movie just had one of the strangest, like,
that's true,
histories, like production histories and stuff, like in the history of movies. It's a movie that went from like something that was dead set coming out in like 2006 and then didn't show up till 2011 on DVD. Yeah. Like, it was bizarre.
Yeah, I've heard that like the heart was cut out of it because they wanted it to be more comedy, less drama.
Yeah, no, it was. I
believe that was Weinstein's decision.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's a lot I don't understand there. Anyway,
can I recommend this book? I'm wondering if you were my age, maybe.
if you tried the first book, like, you can roll the dice. If you didn't like the first book, you're not going to like this.
Oh, for sure.
And if you're not interested in any of this, you're not going to like it. Like, there's nothing. Yeah, no. This is a very niche interest book.
So we did it.
We did it. We did the thing.
Ready Player 2.
Ready Player 2. Oh boy. All right.
Well, this has been PCMC. I'm Mike Bongiorno. I'm joined today by Mike Fischetti. Mike, thanks for being here.
No problem. I always enjoy coming out. It's always a good time.
We'll probably do an episode about something. The last episode we did together was Pulp Disney.
Yeah, we did Pulp Disney.
Disney.
I'll find something to annoy Mike about, and we'll.
And I'm sure we'll do when Ready Player 2, the movie comes out, we'll do it. And Ready Player 3. That's something to look forward to in a future episode.
That's it. Let's tease, folks. We're gonna.
All right, everybody.
We're gonna come at you with those takes you're not gonna be ready for.
PCMC is available anywhere podcasts are found. Also, at PCMC Pod is on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok if you want to check out some extra stuff. We end every episode by saying go bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, nice.
I tried.